some ways. In other words, the press and conservative groups hold on. G. Carney's there, and the Associated Press has the first question.
Now it's confronting a confluence of issues. Benghazi talking points, IRS reviews of political groups, Justice Department review of journalists, phone records, and in every instance, either the president or you have placed the burden of responsibility someplace else. On the Benghazi talking points, it's been political motivations on the Hill. On the IRS, it's been the bureaucrats at the IRS. And on the Justice Department issue yesterday, in your statement, you said those matters are handled independently by the Justice Department. But it is the president's administration, so I wonder, doesn't responsibility for setting tone, setting direction, ultimately rest with the president on these matters?
Well, the responsibility to set tone and to focus on the priorities of the American people is absolutely the responsibility of the president, and you see and hear him do that every day as he fulfills his duties as president. You know, I think you have to separate these issues, and I think if you look at the answers the president gave yesterday in response to questions on the one hand about the clear political circus that Benghazi has become, and his response to questions about the reports of activity by the IRS, I think you see something different. He made clear that if the reports about the activity of IRS personnel prove to be true, he would find them outrageous, and he would expect that appropriate action be taken and that people be held responsible. He has no tolerance for targeting of specific groups, conservative groups, if the reporting is true on this, and he would expect action to be taken. But this is a matter, when it comes to the IRS, that is under review by the independent Inspector General. We have not seen that report. It is our understanding that its release is fairly imminent, and once we have that report, we'll be able to assess next steps. So at this point, we have to wait for the action of an independent investigator, if you will, the Inspector General, before we can jump to conclusions about what happened, whether there was a deliberate targeting of groups inappropriately, and if that's the case, what action should be taken. But you can be sure, and I would point you to the President's response yesterday, what his feelings are about this kind of action if it in fact took place. On the issue of what is a Department of Justice investigation, as I understand it, you know, the President is a strong defender of the First Amendment and a firm believer in the need for the press to be unfettered in its ability to conduct investigative reporting and facilitate a free flow of information. He also, of course, recognizes the need for the Justice Department to investigate alleged criminal activity without undue influence. And as I said yesterday in my statement, other than press reports, we have no knowledge of any attempt by the Justice Department to seek phone records of the Associated Press. We are not involved at the White House in any decisions made in connection with ongoing criminal investigations, as those matters are handled appropriately by the Justice Department independently. And I understand there are a lot of questions about the reports about DOJ's actions, and from my background, I understand them well. But in this situation where the Department appears to be conducting a criminal investigation, it would be wholly inappropriate for me to have answers to those questions. I don't have them, and I have to refer you to the Department of Justice.
If I could then go back to the IRS issue, the President did use the word if these activities had taken place. But there has been an acknowledgement on the part of the IRS leadership that these things did indeed occur. So I wondered why the President used that phrasing in claiming that it was an outrageous.
Well, those from the IRS who have spoken about this obviously have much greater insight into what took place than we do. We have not seen the report. We have not, independently collected information about what transpired. We need the independent Inspector General's report to be released before we can make judgments. One person's view of what actions were taken or what that individual did is not enough for us to say something concretely happened that was inappropriate. I think if you look at some of what's been said, you know, that the actions were inadvertent or not, or constituted something that was specific and inappropriate or not. And I think that what we have to do responsibly is wait for the independent Inspector General's report to be released before we assess next steps. But again, if you look at what the President said yesterday, he was very clear that if there was deliberate, specific targeting of groups, that would be outrageous and would require, in his view, action be taken.
In that action, would there be something that the White House could do unilaterally? Well,
I think that we have to wait and see what next steps are, because obviously there is, you know, a significant amount of independence of the IRS, as well as the NEIG, and we have to wait for what the IG assesses before we can decide what next steps might appropriately be taken. Yeah.
Jay, it's now clear that senior tax officials knew about this extra scrutiny of conservative groups since 2011, which means also during the election, and that this was withheld until after the election. Should the White House have been informed earlier?
My understanding is that when there is a review, as there was and is, by an Inspector General, that when the end of that process is nearing and a report is about to be released, a notification is appropriate and routine, and that is what happened, and that happened several weeks ago. Prior to that, there was no knowledge here at the White House. Now, before I make judgments about, or anyone else here makes judgments about whether you know, the White House should have known more or others in the administration should have known more, we have to find out what exactly happened. And that's why it's important for us to wait for the release of the Inspector General's report, which you know, will hopefully be fairly imminent.
Based on the reporting, do you have any concerns that this was withheld when it could have been a big story?
Well, we have serious concerns about what's been reported. I think you saw that reflected in what the President said. And again, it's been reported, and we have to make sure that the independent review of this by an Inspector General is revealed, and we can assess that and assess what actually happened, what motivations there were behind whatever actions were taken, and then decide what action is appropriate and who should take it.
When did the President find out about the Department of Justice's subpoenas for the Associated Press?
Yesterday.
And
I mean, let me just be clear. We don't have any independent knowledge of that. He found out about the news reports yesterday on the road.
what was his reaction to that? Does he believe that this was an overreach?
All I can tell you is that I cannot and he cannot comment specifically on an ongoing criminal investigation or actions that investigators at the Department of Justice may or may not have taken. It would be wholly inappropriate. And if we did comment on it, or if we did have insight into it, you would appropriately ask why, and is that correct procedure? Because it would not be. So I can't comment on the specifics of that, but I can tell you that the President feels strongly that we need the press to be able to be unfettered in its pursuit of investigative journalism. And you saw when he was a senator, the President co-sponsored legislation that would have provided further protections for journalists in this regard. And he is also mindful of the need for secret and classified information to remain secret and classified in order to protect our national security interests. So there is a careful balance here that must be attained. But I think it's important to look at the President's past here to understand where he comes from in this, broadly speaking, where he comes from in regard to issues like this. But we simply can't comment on the specific investigation.
President Obama is being compared to President Nixon on this. How does he feel about that?
Again, I don't have a reaction from President Obama. I can tell you that the people who make those kind of comparisons need to check their history because, what we have here with one issue in Benghazi is so clearly, as we're learning more and more, a political sideshow, a deliberate effort to politicize a tragedy. The President feels very strongly about that. You heard him address that yesterday. On these other issues, these are things that we are finding out about, and we need to wait appropriately for independent action to be completed before he can in any way take action or comment specifically on it. I think that it is a reflection of the, sort of rapid politicization of everything that you have that kind of commentary. Everything becomes, a huge political issue when, if you look at the facts, and I think Benghazi is instructive in this, the real issue is that 4 Americans died. And we need to do everything we can, as the President has committed himself to doing, to finding out who did it, finding out why, and to taking the steps necessary to ensure that our diplomatic personnel are protected and our facilities are protected so that what happened in Benghazi doesn't happen again. Instead of trying to score political points, which Republicans have been doing since the hours after the attack. And it's very unfortunate. And it's not what the American people expect us to do, because going back to Jim's original question, the President is here to try to achieve the things that he told the American people he would try to achieve, and that they supported him in 2 elections now in trying to achieve. And that is to focus on the middle class, to help in any way he can, to strengthen the middle class, to help the country build the economic foundation that's essential for the kind of dominance economically in the 21st century that this country enjoyed in the 20th. And that is, that is what he spends his time focusing on. That and the paramount interests of protecting the national security of the United States. Jessica.
Jay, you say check our history, rapid commentary, but you have to understand and hear how it sounds like the administration might be hiding something. So can we take these one at a time? On the IRS on Friday, they gave one version of the story that's changed several times since then. So can you just say plainly, does the President believe that they're being truthful, and does he think that the leadership there needs to change?
Well, I don't understand how that tracks with your first sentence about assertion here. We have seen the reports, as the President said, and if the reports are true, he would consider them outrageous.
Even this IRS has acknowledged that some of this wrongdoing has happened. So the President and this administration could agree. And
I think you heard the President say yesterday that if it turns out to be the case, and again, there's a lot of reporting, not all of it complimentary, some of it contradictory.
He said there was IRS personnel, which sounded like it was isolated. We've now learned that it was.
How could IRS personnel be isolated? That could be the entire agency. I mean, it's what he's basing it.
That it touched
but
the
Jessica,
Washington
D.C.
office. Is he concerned that this is a broader problem?
He's concerned by he's concerned by every report he sees on this. You can believe that he is concerned by that, and that is why he looks forward to finding out what the IG report says, and then deciding what next steps need to be taken, and who needs to take them. And that's, instead of rushing to conclusions or, perpetrating consequences before we even know specifically what happened, and the whole story would be inappropriate for a president to do. And so, again, he made clear what his view of this action, if there was specific, deliberate targeting of conservative groups or any groups inappropriately, he would be outraged. And he finds the suggestions of that to be outrageous. But we cannot, and we should not, prejudge the outcome of an investigation.
What is the consequence of his outrage?
We'll see. Why? How could he possibly say what the consequence will be before we know what the facts are? Okay. Shouldn't we let the facts be revealed by this independent Inspector General report before we make some conclusive judgments about what actions need to be taken?
On the IRS DOJ story, we understand that you guys can't get involved in a leaks investigation that could touch the White House and the administration, and that it's a legal violation and it's a legal issue if that happened. But this involved multiple months, multiple locations, many phones. Is the President at all concerned about the breadth of the investigation, about the breadth and depth that the DOJ is using to pursue leaks in general, which has become a priority for this president? He's prosecuted in this administration more people for leaks than every other president put together.
Jessica, what I can tell you is that this president believes strongly in the First Amendment and is a strong defender of the First Amendment. He believes strongly in the need for the press to be unfettered in its pursuit of investigative journalism. He also believes strongly as a citizen and as president in the need to ensure that classified information is not leaked, because it can endanger our national security interests. It can endanger American men and women around the world. But I cannot, and he cannot, appropriately comment on the specifics of an ongoing criminal investigation for the reasons that you yourself just raised.
It's not about the specifics of this investigation.
You listed the specifics of the investigation, or at least as reported.
Is he concerned at all about the precedent this is setting and that this is the legacy of his Attorney General?
This, I think, refers to this investigation, so I cannot comment on that. What I can tell you is the President absolutely believes in the need for the press to be able to pursue unfettered investigative journalism. And you saw that in prior to his arrival in this office, when he was a senator and co-sponsored legislation that would enhance protections for the media, and the principles that are behind that effort are ones that he holds to this day. But I can't then take that to a specific case that's been reported in the press, again, that we learn about from the press appropriately. Because if we learned about it any other way, it would be inappropriate.
You'll comment on it after the case is decided.
Well,
I'm joking. Okay.
Thank you. Hey, Sean.
Hey, Jay, can you say categorically that nobody at the White House and nobody on the president's political team had any knowledge or was involved in any way in the targeting of Tea Party groups by the IRS?
Yes.
Absolutely not.
I mean, look, we found out about this or at least the counsel's office was notified about this investigation, this activity, potential activity, very broadly just a few weeks ago. And beyond that, you know, we learn about everything we know about this from what we see in your reports. So that's why we have to wait for the Inspector General's report before we can assess, based on that and what it tells us, what we know and about what happened and what didn't, and what actions should be taken, and then decide on what next steps should be taken.
People are going to be fired over this?
Again, that we'll have to see what the report concludes and what else needs to be done to find out, if necessary, what happened. The reports that we've seen are very troubling, and if true, and depending on the reports, because there's been a series of different ones, but if it is true that there was a knowing effort to target specific organizations, as reported conservative organizations, that would be outrageous in the President's view, and there should be consequences.
And while you clearly can't comment on the Justice Department investigation, as a principle, does the President approve of the idea of prosecutors going through the personal phone records and work phone records of journalists and their editors?
I appreciate the effort to generalize the question, but obviously that goes right to the heart of some of the reporting on this specific case. I can tell you that the President believes that the press, as a rule, needs to have an unfettered ability to pursue investigative journalism. And
how can it be unfettered if you're worried about having your phone records?
Well, again, I can't respond to this in the specific, and you know, I am very understanding of the questions on this issue, and appreciate the nature of the questions, and I think they go to important issues, and they go to the fundamental issue of finding the balance between, when it comes to leaks of classified information, of our nation's secrets, if you will, between the need to protect that information because of the national security implications of not protecting them on the one hand, and the need to allow for an unfettered press and in its pursuit of investigative journalism. So this is a balance that the President believes is important, that we have to find, and you know, how he views these issues can be seen in the actions and proposals he's made in the past. But when it comes to this specific case, I simply cannot get into the details of our view or his view of it.
Just the last question. And just the last question. Is all of this, all this swirl of controversy and stories affecting the President's ability to pursue his agenda?
The President is focused on what he believes the American people expect from him and from their leaders in Washington. And you have seen that, and you will continue to see that in the days and weeks and months ahead. overwhelmingly, Americans are concerned about continuing the recovery out of the worst recession since the Great Depression, building on the job creation that we've seen, continuing to expand and make more secure the middle class, taking the necessary steps to invest in our future so that our economy can grow later. And that means bipartisan cooperation on things like investing in infrastructure or in innovation, in the kind of investment in the innovation hubs that the President talked about in Austin last week. You know, these are the issues that he's focused on. They include comprehensive immigration reform, which he is constantly discussing with leaders and members of Congress, a bipartisan effort that he believes can and should produce a law that he can sign that reflects the principles that he's laid out a long time ago. So there's a lot of work to be done, and he's focused on that work. Chip, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Welcome back.
I appreciate it. As you know, numerous members of Congress over a period of a couple of years wrote the IRS and asked if conservative groups were being targeted. Those officials did not respond. If it turns out that those officials did know at the time that the conservative groups were being or had been targeted, should those officials be punished?
That goes into, I mean, the if phrasing is appropriate. If what we're seeing in some of these reports about specific targeting and actions taken by personnel within the IRS turns out to be true, then people should be held accountable. And what that means in concrete action we'll have to see based on the information and the facts that are gathered, principally, at least at first, by the Inspector General. So you heard from the President yesterday. You heard the outrage that he conveyed at the reports of this kind of activity.
Outrage or potential outrage? I mean, he's saying he's only going to be outraged if.
I don't think you would want a president to be outraged on something that turned out not to be true. We have to wait.
He apologized for part of it. Don't we know that part of it is fact? It's not in the if area anymore. It's fact.
I agree with that, and I think that was reflected in the tone and the nature of the comments you saw from the president. But on the broader issue here about getting all the facts, it really is important, in our view and the president's view, that we let the independent Inspector General complete that report, that we assess it when we see it, because we haven't seen it. There have been suggestions in the reports that some of it has leaked out, but we haven't seen it. We don't have access to it, and when we do, we'll be able to assess it a lot more specifically than we can now.
And one other question following up on Jim's question about what he called the confluence of issues. You've got Benghazi, IRS, HHS, DOJ. If you read some of the articles on this, it almost sounds like there's a siege going on. Is there a siege mentality back there in the West Wing right now?
Absolutely not. We are focused on the things that we can do to help the middle class, the things that we can do to move our economy forward. To help our kids get educated, to work with Congress to achieve what will hopefully be a bipartisan comprehensive immigration bill that this president can sign into law, working with Congress, as you've seen over the last weeks and months, to see if we can find common ground on reducing our deficit in a balanced way that will help the economy grow, help it create more jobs. We are focused on these fundamental issues that the American people sent this president to this office twice now to focus on. And I understand the effort. I mean I understand the natural inclination to try to bunch some of these things together, but there really is a distinction here, and I think you heard it from the president that the ongoing obsession, and I'm quoting now somebody describing the Speaker of the House, the ongoing obsession with talking points and Benghazi and the attempts to politicize that constitute a sideshow that's driven purely by or largely by political interest and not the interest of finding out exactly what happened and who was responsible and taking the steps that we need to take to ensure that our diplomats and our facilities are secure. That's what the president's been focused on. That's what you've seen in the report from the ARB, the Accountability Review Board, that was overseen by Admiral Mullen and Ambassador Pickering, and it's what you've seen in the President's insistence that the investigation led by the FBI into finding out who was responsible for the deaths of 4 Americans reach a point where we can bring those responsible to justice.
Jay, on the AP phone records, what prevents the President from picking up a phone, calling Eric Holder and asking him what happened?
A great deal prevents the President from doing that. It would be wholly inappropriate for the President to involve himself in a criminal investigation that, as Jessica points out, at least as reported, involves leaks of information from the administration. I mean, imagine the story on Fox if that were to happen. So that's why. And you know, we have seen from the press reports the information about attempts to seek phone records from the Associated Press, and we're not involved in those decisions. And we can't comment on an ongoing criminal investigation for reasons that I know that maybe the question was rhetorical, but I think are pretty apparent to everyone who's covered these things over the years.
Is it your understanding that no one could have ordered this but the Attorney General?
That is, well, it's my understanding that this is something that the Department of Justice does and that the investigators in the Department of Justice handle. There is, I believe, when it comes to these kinds of things, a decision-making process, but I would refer you to the Department of Justice for who actually made the decision that's been reported, because again, our information comes only from press reports on this.
If that turns out to be the Attorney General or whoever it turns out to be, will the President have confidence in that person?
The President has confidence in the Attorney General. He has confidence in his team over at the Department of Justice. I think that again, I'm not going to comment on the specifics of an investigation here. I think that it is important to note that, as I've said earlier, that there is a balance here that has to be struck between our national security interests and the need to prevent classified information from leaking, classified information that can endanger Americans and harm our national security, on the one hand, and the President's firm commitment to the need for reporters to be able to, in an unfettered way, pursue investigative journalism.
And do you believe it's possible to strike that balance and at the same time subpoena the phone records of reporters?
Wendell, I just can't comment on the specific reports that you cite. I can say that the President does believe that that balance should be sought and can be found, but it is a balance, and therefore something that you know, we need to constantly work at. And you've seen from the past, from the measures that the President supported as a senator, that he believed action should be taken to alter the balance. But I cannot comment on this specific investigation for all the obvious reasons.
But we know it happened just as the IRS admitted what it had done in terms of the Tea Party and other groups. The AP knows its phone records were subpoenaed because the Justice Department told the AP. The President find any way that might fit in the balance that you say needs to be struck?
Again, it would be inappropriate to comment on the specific investigation and the methods that have been reported. I can tell you that it is important to protect our national security classified information. It is also, in the President's view, essential to allow journalists to be able to pursue in an unfettered way investigative journalism.
Jay,
Mr. Todd.
you keep talking about it, that then Senator Obama supported a certain piece of legislation. That is a fact. As president, he killed that piece of legislation in October of 2009 that made it so that the protections that he supported, having judicial review on this decision about subpoena, and then there was an opportunity for this bill to be passed. Chuck Schumer was supportive of it, and he said it was the White House that had problems with it and killed it.
Well, I think first of all, you're talking about separate pieces of legislation and a legislative history that bears a little more looking into. The President's position on this is what it was as a senator. But the fact is, I cannot then appropriately apply his support for that measure.
If he supported this piece of legislation, we wouldn't be having this conversation today, because there would be he supported a judicial review when it came to some of this.
And what happened to it in 2007?
I'm asking you what happened to it in 2009 when he was president of the United States.
The legislative history here is a little more complicated than you present.
But the Democrats were in charge. You had Chuck Schumer. I mean, this is 2009. who cares about 2007? We know what he said on the campaign trail in 2008 in front of the Associated Press when it came to this issue. He had a chance to support this and make this bill happen. Why didn't he change his position? Yes, it has.
It hasn't, John.
The administration said that essentially the president changed his position because of certain things on national security. Can you explain why he changed his
look,
position?
again, broadly speaking, the president does support the ability of journalists in an unfettered way to pursue investigative journalism. He believes that we have to find a balance between that goal
So the balance he had, he believed in 08, he didn't believe in once he was president?
Again, I think that he has addressed this some, and I think you are obviously free to ask him when the next time he has a press conference to ask him about this. But the fact is, as president, he obviously has responsibilities as commander-in-chief to ensure that classified information, that the nation's secrets, that is highly sensitive information, is not leaked, because the leaking of that information can endanger individuals as well as our overall national security interests.
A third party should make that decision. I mean, that's fine. As a candidate, he said that the point of the press is sometimes to be a watchdog of the watchdog a little bit, and that the judiciary branch is probably the appropriate place for them to make that determination. Look, you guys will claim classified, and it's not just you as an administration. Any administration claims everything is somehow national security leak, can fall under this rubrics of that. But having a third party make that decision about, is it truly going to endanger lives? Is it truly going to do this? And you make your case in front of a third party. Does the president support that kind of protection for media sources?
I don't have an answer to that specific scenario that you laid out. I can tell you that the president does support.
He supported in 2008.
Well, then he does support protections for the media. He does believe that we need to take measures to ensure that the media can pursue investigative journalism in an unfettered way. And we have to balance that goal with the very real national security interests that we have as a nation. Understandably, there is great concern when classified information is leaked that can jeopardize our national security interests or endanger individuals.
I want to follow up on the IRS. I still don't quite understand the timeline. We had members of Congress complaining about this for 2 years. Did it just never reach you guys here at the White House that there was these complaints that conservative groups felt that they were being singled out and targeted at any point in time?
I mean, I'm not sure that I'm sure people were aware of and knew some of the stories that had been reported about the complaints, but we were not aware of any activity or of any review conducted by the Inspector General until several weeks ago.
Should you have been made aware sooner?
Well, I was asked that before, and I don't want to.
I don't understand.
Let's just say that.
Why wouldn't you want to know?
Well, first of all, for all the reasons why there should be distance between, why the IRS should not be politicized. There has to be that distance. But on the specific question that you have, I want to wait and see what the report says, and wait and see what we actually know happened and what the facts are before we comment beyond what the president said yesterday on this matter, and before we make any decisions or pronouncements about what action should be taken. I mean, you heard what the president said about what he believes and what he feels should what's reported about specific targeting turn out to be true. But we need to wait and see if that's in fact the case, and how and what the scope of it is before we make decisions about how to proceed.
Do you have any update about when you're going to? I know that Republican Senator Bob Corker of Tennessee is saying he's been waiting for an explanation on Ahmed Karzai claiming cash payments from the CIA, and that these cash payments are continuing, and he's been confirming this and claiming it in Afghanistan, and Senator Corker was hoping for an explanation from the president, and he says it's now been 2 letters and he hasn't gotten any explanation.
I'm not aware of the letters. I'll have to take the question. The specific story itself involves the CIA, and I'd have to refer you to them. But with regards to the letters, I'll let you know if there's a response.
Jay.
Yeah.
Jay, you've used this formulation about the president's support for unfettered investigative reporting a number of times here. To what extent is the former constitutional law professor in the Oval Office torn between that philosophy and the case for going after leaks?
I think the appropriate way to describe it is that the president believes there needs to be a balance because there is an interest in making sure that classified information that is sensitive is not leaked, and because of the consequences to national security and to individuals. But there is also an interest in the president's view in ensuring that the press can pursue investigative journalism and be unfettered in that pursuit. And to the earlier point that Chuck was making, even after he became president, the Attorney General and Director of National Intelligence, after the president took office, his Attorney General and his Director of National Intelligence sent a letter to Congress in November of 2009 expressing the administration's support for media shield legislation. So the position that the president held as a senator, he continues to hold as president. But that balance is important. And, again, without commenting on specific reports about specific cases, we have to be mindful of the fact that national security interests are significant and classified information needs to be protected.
Well, he has to know that a reporter can't be unfettered if a reporter is subjected to a fishing expedition, personal phone records and office phone records.
Well, Peter, broadly speaking, I think that the president understands that a reporter needs to be shielded in the way that he's supported as a senator and has supported as a president. I cannot, because of the nature of your question, express an opinion about reported developments in a criminal investigation currently underway at the Department of Justice.
You just said categorically that you could say no one from the White House or in the president's political team was involved. There's a pretty unequivocal answer on your part. And yet the bulk of this press conference is you saying you don't have all the facts. It's a wait-and-see approach.
That's a fair point. What I can tell you is that...
What gives you that confidence?
I can tell you that, as I think I said yesterday, the White House counsel was alerted about this IG review and the general topic of it just a few weeks ago. And prior, I didn't find out about
it. From being categorically certain that no one from the White House's team or the political team was involved.
I have no reason to believe.
So you're doing that on good faith, or this is just your assumption?
Because I can tell you that I am not aware of anyone here knowing about it. It would be obviously...
So it's down to your direct knowledge of being aware of anyone here?
Hans, you can ask me if, somebody who works on...
You've asserted something categorically, and I'm trying to understand how you know that.
I am certainly not aware of and am confident that no one here was involved in this. We found out about it just a few weeks ago, and only, when I say we, I didn't, the president didn't, but the White House counsel's office only found out about the review being conducted and coming to conclusion by the Inspector General.
So what gives you the confidence?
I think I can say that I feel confident in that, but I don't have any...
Do you have any facts?
You're asking me to prove a negative, Hans.
Well, you've made the assertion. You've asserted that you're confident that no one... You're the one that actually put it out.
Again, you heard the president express his views, and we're going to wait and see what the facts are based on the independent Inspector General review, and then we will make judgments about those facts and what next steps might be taken and by whom and with what actions might be taken. But I'm just not going to get into any more details about it because it would be inappropriate to do so. All right.
I want to follow up on a question Jessica asked that has nothing to do with this specific investigation. This administration in the last 4 years has prosecuted twice as many leakers as every previous administration combined. How does that reflect balance?
I would say that the president is committed to the press's ability to pursue information, to defending the First Amendment. He is also, as a citizen and as Commander-in-Chief, committed to the proposition that we cannot allow classified information to be that can do harm to our national security interests or to endanger individuals to be leaked, and that is a balance that has to be struck.
But the record of the last 4 years does not suggest balance.
That's your opinion, Ari.
No, it's twice as many prosecutions as all previous administrations combined. That's not even close.
I understand that there are ongoing investigations that preceded this administration, but again, I'm not going to. I can tell you what the president's views are, And the President's views include his defense of the First Amendment, his belief that journalists ought to be able to pursue information in an unfettered way, and that is backed up by his support for a media shield law, both as Senator and as President. And it is also true that he believes a balance needs to be struck between those goals and the need to protect classified information. And you're not going to hear him say that it's okay for the nation's secrets to be freely reported when that information can endanger our national security and do harm to individuals and endanger individuals.
Do you think a fair analysis of this administration's actions reflect the views you've just described?
I believe that the President supports balance and that he has made that clear, both as President and within his administration. I cannot comment on the specific case, but I can tell you what the President believes and what his actions and have been in the past.
Pakistan elections?
Let me move around a bit. Kathleen.
You just mentioned that you said the President has made this goal of balance clear within his administration. Can you describe how he's communicated that within the administration or within the to the Justice Department as far as guidance?
Well, the President's position, I think I just cited a November 2009 letter to Congress from the Attorney General and the Director of National Intelligence expressing the administration's support, the Obama administration's support for media shield legislation. So that is a clear expression from several components of the administration about the President's views. I can tell you that as somebody who spends a lot of time with him and speaks about the press frequently, that he...
There you have it. Jay Carney, the #1 theme of the day is the balance that is needed between our national security concerns and the President's respect for freedom of the press. But when it comes to the actual deed of the IRS, I should say of the DOJ investigating the Associated Press, the President didn't know anything about it. He didn't know anything about it. Chris Direwalt is still with us. I said at the top of the hour it was tough to treat this with humor, but the whole thing reminds me of a show I used to watch when I was little and with my family, and a very well-known character and how he would respond when it came to any controversial matter. Watch.
Nothing. I was not here. I did not even get up this morning. I see nothing.
Sorry, I had to. I had to do it.
Counselor, that is not fair. That is dirty pool to play Sergeant Schultz for me right now. You can't do that.
Come on, we needed a laugh after that. I mean, that's basically what he's saying, right? Who? Eric, who? Associated Press? No, just found out about it. IRS? No, who are they? No, we don't pick up the phone and talk to them, and we can't do that because of, the walls that exist. No, in Benghazi, it's all political. No, huh?
I personally am feeling unfettered. I don't know about you. I feel unfettered after that
it's trending on Twitter.
Media availability. Yes, I just feel Mr. Carney and the President want me to feel unfettered, and I want them to know I feel fully unfettered at this moment.
Clearly,
My
I do
fetters
as well.
are gone.
Playing Hogan's Heroes clips.
Yeah, if you've got Schultz, you've got it all. But in the serious part of this, and this is very serious business, the only power greater than taxation, the only power to take people's money away from them that
Chris,
the federal government has is the power to kill them.
Can you accept my apologies? I'm so sorry to do this to you twice.
Why are you sorry?
But now Eric Holder is speaking on the matter. Let's go to him.
Subpoena. This was a very serious leak. And a very, very serious leak. I've been a prosecutor since 1976, and I have to say that this is among, if not the most serious, it is within the top 2 or 3 most serious leaks that I've ever seen. It put the American people at risk, and that is not hyperbole. It put the American people at risk, and trying to determine who was responsible for that, I think, required very aggressive action. And as I said, I'm sure that the subpoena as formulated, based on the people that I know, I don't know about the facts, but based on the people I know, I think that that subpoena was done in conformance with DOJ regs.
Mr. Attorney General, the AP says that it found out about this after the fact, after the records were already taken. Why was no attempt made to seek the AP's voluntary cooperation?
Again, you're getting into matters that are beyond my knowledge. I was recused in the matter, so I don't know.
Are you comfortable with that approach? Because ordinarily, wouldn't protocol require that you would try to approach for voluntary cooperation?
Well, I don't know what the circumstances were here, and so, how things are done in a particular investigation have to be dictated by the facts, and I frankly don't have knowledge of those facts.
I think the real question here, the underlying question, is the policy of the administration when it comes to the ability of the media to cover the news. And I think the question for you is, given the fact that this news organization was not given an opportunity to try to quash this in court, as has been precedent, it leaves us in the position of wondering whether the administration has somehow decided policy-wise that it's kind of going to go after us.
Well, that is certainly not, I mean, I can talk about policy. That is certainly not the policy of this administration. If you will remember, in 2009, when I was going through my confirmation hearings, I testified in favor of a reporter shield law. We actually, as an administration, took a position in favor of such a law. Didn't get the necessary support up on the Hill. It is something this administration still thinks would be appropriate. We've investigated cases on the basis of the facts, not as a result of a policy to get the press or to do anything of that nature. The facts and the law have dictated our actions in that regard.
Mr. Attorney General, you said that it's not hyperbole that this put American lives at risk. If the underlying investigation was basically being run with the knowledge and with the hand of the U.S. government, why was there any risk to Americans when that information came out?
Well, I can't answer that question.
Can you elaborate on your decision to recuse yourself and when you did that?
As I said, towards the beginning of the investigation, and perhaps we can get for you the exact date. I don't know when that was. But as I said, it was because I was one of the people who had knowledge of this matter. I have frequent contact with the media and try to make sure that this investigation was seen as one that was independent and to avoid even the possibility of an appearance of a conflict. I made the determination to recuse myself.
Are you also recused from the Stuxnet investigation?
On the IRS controversy, is there any concern that, on the IRS controversy, is there any concern that criminal laws have been broken, and if so, have you ordered an investigation?
I have ordered an investigation to be begun. The FBI is coordinating with the Justice Department to see if any laws were broken in connection with those matters related to the IRS. Those were, I think, as everyone can agree, if not criminal, they were certainly outrageous and unacceptable, but we are examining the facts to see if there were criminal violations.
When did you order that?
On Friday.
Are you also recused from the Stuxnet investigation out of Maryland?
I'm not going to comment on that.
General Holder, with the IRS and AP situation, a lot of Americans say they don't trust the administration right now. What can you say to them that you can ensure that they should trust all of you?
Well, to the extent that we have determined that actors in government have gone beyond what they were supposed to do, broken regulations, broken rules, broken the law, we have prosecuted people. We have held people accountable. We have tried to do things according to the rules. There are going to be people occasionally who will not do so. It is then incumbent upon us who have enforcement responsibilities to make sure that we hold those people accountable. And I think our record shows that over the last 4.5 years we've done that.
The regulations require these subpoenas to be drawn as narrowly as possible. Do you believe that in this case, where there was a 2-month period of 20 different phone lines, is that, in your view, a narrowly drawn request?
One thing I would refer you to, the Deputy Attorney General has written a letter in response to the AP letter. I assume, I don't know if it's been made available yet, but that has a number of factual assertions in it that contradict some of the assertions that were made by the letter that came from the AP. So I would refer you to that with regard to a response to that question.
Taking together the AP story, the IRS story, the failure to close Guantanamo, there's a growing sense that this administration's record on civil liberties has not lived up to the promises that you and others made beginning in 2008 and the criticisms of the past administration. Looking broadly at this administration's civil liberties record, are you disappointed, and why hasn't more been done?
I'm proud of what we have done. The policies that we put in place with regard to, let's say, the war on terror. We decided that certain interrogation techniques were not going to be used. We have been, I think, very aggressive in our enforcement of the civil rights laws. There have been a whole host of things that this administration has done, this Justice Department in particular, that are consistent with what I think the President campaigned on and what we promised at the beginning of this administration.
The interrogation practices, those changed during the last administration. The President signed executive orders that effectively just continued what had already happened. You mentioned civil rights laws, but there are so many other examples where people are disappointed in this administration's civil liberties record, both on the left and the right. Do you need to change course, and aren't you trampling on civil liberties the same way the Bush administration did?
No. No, we're not. This administration has put a real value on the rule of law and our values as Americans. I think the actions that we have taken are consistent with both. If one looks at, in a dispassionate way, what we have done in a whole variety of areas, I found a moribund civil rights division. And that is a division now that has brought record numbers of cases, protected record numbers of people. I would take issue with you with regard to how we have conducted the war on terror, and with regard to interrogation policies. There were changes made by this administration, a repudiation of OLC opinions that existed when we came into office. So we're talking about, I think, changes that were consistent with, as I said, what the President campaigned on and what we talked about early on. Carrie?
Expressed some concern about a lack of transparency with regard to the administration's drone program and promised more transparency. What are you going to do about that?
Yeah, we are in the process of speaking to that. I made a promise. That is a promise that I think will be kept, both by me and by the President, in a relatively short period of time. We have a rollout that will be happening relatively soon.
The phone records in the AP case, the notification spoke to phone records because the Justice Department's internal regulations speaks to phone records. Those regulations don't speak to email records. Based on your briefings, either at the time or now that it's all come out, can you say whether journalists' email records, including contents of email records that may be older than 6 months, were accessed as part of this investigation?
Again, you'd have to refer to the letter that the Deputy Attorney General prepared. It actually is, I think, from what I understand, I've only seen it in draft form, but it is pretty specific about times, dates in which things were acquired and what actually was acquired.
What a busy afternoon, folks. Just to set the table for you, we saw a lengthy press conference, press briefing by Jay Carney, the White House spokesperson, defending the president's use of the term "if" in discussing IRS behaviors, targeting conservative groups, saying we need to see the Inspector General's report. Now that report's been out there. It's been leaked by some to news agencies, and yet the White House claims the president hasn't seen it. The White House counsel's office was given a heads up a few weeks ago. But President Obama says if they deliberately targeted conservative groups, then it's outrageous and there should be accountability. Meantime, the IRS came out on Friday and apologized for its behavior. So that is why the reporters were asking why the qualifier. We also heard Jay Carney trying to defend the president when it comes to the Department of Justice crackdown on the Associated Press. The news is that the U.S. Attorney in Washington went and got a subpoena to take a look at all the phone records of about 100 or so reporters' lines at the Associated Press about a year ago. And over a 2-month period, they looked at their phone records on reporters' home phones, their cell phones, their office lines in at least 3 or 4 different areas, and they monitored those numbers and pursued whatever leads they pursued because they thought someone had leaked to the AP about a terror story that they shouldn't have leaked. Now, there are ways of investigating that without doing what the DOJ allegedly did. But you heard Jay Carney saying, look, that's something for the DOJ to speak to. And the White House didn't know anything about that either. And now we hear the Attorney General Eric Holder saying he is confident that the Department of Justice followed the rules in the Associated Press subpoena, and saying that he had recused himself from that whole leak investigation. This kind of subpoena would have required him to sign off. But he's saying he recused himself a long time ago from that whole leak investigation because somebody had questioned him in connection with it. And he said, all right, I'm out. The deputy AG is in. And so we presume that that is the person who signed off on that subpoena. Once again, not me. Hands off. Want to bring back Chris Stirewalt here to react, because he also commented, Chris, on the IRS investigation, saying that was outrageous and unacceptable what the IRS did to conservative groups, if not criminal, and he's calling for an internal investigation over that activity. So he sort of defends, Holder does, the AP probe, but he is on the same page as the president when it comes to whether the IRS crossed a boundary here, and perhaps even a criminal boundary. Again, let me give you the chance now, truly, to give us your view on these breaking news matters.
Well, look, this is pretty simple. The power to take people's money away from them legally, the power of taxation, is second only to the ability to deprive people of their liberty, put them in prison for a crime, make them go into the military, or take their lives. This is a huge power that we entrust the federal government with. If it is done improperly, people rightly freak out. They rightly become deeply alarmed when it is done in the wrong way. The president, if he wishes to get beyond these scandals that are currently plaguing his administration, must show some more urgency than Jay Carney was demonstrating today with the if that, if the other thing, if the other thing. The president should be suspending people. He should be lowering the boom now in a preventative measure to make sure that this kind of bad behavior isn't persisting even as this much vaunted Inspector General's report is going on. Just on the basis of what the agency has apologized for should be enough to start suspending some folks and start bringing the real presidential crackdown. The fact that Carney didn't want to do that today is telling.
Before I let you go, it was both Carney and Eric Holder were talking about how supportive the president has been and Eric Holder has been of reporter shield laws. You know, the president as a senator, and then it's for some time as the president, and Eric Holder saying, I support a reporter shield law. We're not out to get the press. I mean, I joked to the crew here in the studio as we were listening to it. Some of my best friends are reporters. That's how they sounded, right? What? We love the press. What? Huh? Subpoena records, huh? And yet the truth is, as one of the reporters present pointed out to Jay Carney, this administration has brought more leak investigations, 2 times as many leak investigations than all other presidents combined. And they have been selective. So if you leak on something that maybe makes the president look good, like the UBL killing and raid, maybe you don't get prosecuted. But if you leak on something that maybe doesn't make the White House look that good, you're going to have Eric Holder or his deputy calling you up, or maybe subpoenaing your phone calls to a news agency or what have you. And that's where the criticism lies. And there was a defensive tone by both of them on that today, but the facts are the facts.
Facts are the facts. It'd be like saying you like unfettered investigative journalism. Say like, I favor unfettered fishing, but I'm going to take all the fish out of the lake. There's nothing for you to catch because nobody's allowed to talk, and people are afraid to talk to you, to have a chilling effect. The clear side effect of this stuff is to have a chilling effect on people inside the government who want to talk to the reporters. If you take all the fish out of the lake, you can tell the fishermen, cast away, cast your lines, all that you want, but there'll be nothing to catch.
Chris, I'm glad we finally got your take on it. Despite
and thank you for Sergeant Schultz.
I mean, we might have to bring him back.
I think you should.